Welcome back to Skyrocket. Again, my name is Chris Barney. I'm joined by Jose. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here.
We're going to be looking at goal setting, and it seems like such an elementary thing to discuss, but just saying you have a goal doesn't mean it's a good goal, doesn't mean you communicated it well, doesn't mean it relates to the overall purposes and strategies that you have. So we're going to be looking at a few things like that. So let's begin with just simply, Jose, why are goals so important to an individual and to an organization?
Well, think about sports for a second, right? I mean, if you're going to, win a World Series or win a Super Bowl or an NBA championship or whatever, you're practicing, right? And you have a goal, what weight you need to be at. You have a goal in terms of your diet. You have a goal in terms of how many repetitions for, a particular thing that you have to do. And in business, it's really no different, right? So, I mean, obviously, as a sales leader, the big goal for a salesperson is quota, and we'll talk about that more in a few minutes and how to get there. But from a personal perspective, right, when I hire someone, I ask them about their goals. Okay, what are your personal goals? What are your financial goals? Because it's important. So someone might say, I want to make a lot of money because, my kids are going to start college in a couple of years. Okay, great. Let's help you get there.
Yeah.
My goal is to improve my relationship with my spouse. Okay, great. Let's make sure that you have a job that allows you to spend more time at home, right? So all these things kind of come together. And if you don't have a written goal, whether it's personal or professional, it's just hard to be successful.
Mhm.
So, I've got a number of goals and I look at them on a regular basis. Am I getting close to that goal? And what do I need to do to potentially pivot to get to that goal? And I have something to look at. It's that flag planted up at the top of the hill that I'm going towards.
Yeah, and whether it's personal or organizational, it's all about direction. We have direction, we have vision, we have those big strategic objectives, then you have your goals. And out of goals come tasks. And goals become kind of that magic doorway between your everyday tasks and your long-term objectives. And then making sure that you're taking people back to those goals, taking yourself back to those goals to say, it's not just simply, I have some things I want to accomplish. How does it relate to my overall objectives? And then I can backtrack that to today's tasks because today's tasks can seem so mundane, you may not even want to do them. But if you can connect them to a goal that then connects them to the overall objectives, and then connect to your direction and your vision, well, now that task takes on a lot more meaning. So goals are kind of that really neat linchpin that we form to keep ourselves productive in that way.
Yeah, so for me, I think the best thing I could do right this second is focus on what a salesperson's goals are, which of course is hitting their number. So I always start with, okay, what's the quota? Okay, it's X, right? And so if X is a revenue target, let's say, okay, how many deals do you need to close to hit that revenue target? So now you go and you say, okay, well, what's the average size of my deal? What is the time frame it takes to do a deal? What is the closing percentage? So, when I set up, for example, in Salesforce.com or any other CRM like that, you can have stages, right? You have your initial stage, you have your, first meeting stage, your demo stage, all the different stages, and you apply percentages to them so that after a while, if you've got that data, you can determine how long it takes to get deals done. What's the likelihood when you hit each stage that you're going to close the deal? So if you have all that information,
Mm.
then you go and say, okay, well, in order to get this deal flow into my pipeline, knowing it's going to move like this, how many phone calls am I going to have to make, right? And make a goal for, of course, all those things.
Right.
How many text messages do I have to send? How many emails do I have to send? How many things do I need to post on social media to get, one conversation going? And then based on that, how many meetings do I have to have with them? How many, presentations do I need to do? How many people do I need to touch? And you can essentially back into it. So then you can take a look. So I always used to tell people years ago when I was managing a very large team, I say, listen, if your goal is, let's just pick a number. It's your goal is 15 deals a year, then you better have a pipeline over time that's going to be 45 or 60 deals, right? Because based on your percentage, you might only close 25% of the people you talk to. So if you're only talking to 15 people, you're not going to hit your number, right? You got to be
Yeah.
talking to 60 people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a great way as you're dovetailing the idea of goals and tasks.
Right.
Goals have to have some actionable items. And I think when we talk about creating goals, whether it's in sales or just personally or organizationally, we use that acronym SMART, SMART goals. That S is specific. I can say I want to lose weight, but that's a intention. It doesn't really make it a goal. I want to lose weight. Well, specifically what? I want to lose 10 pounds. Be specific about it. Measurable. You just kind of say, I have this goal. How will you know if you achieve that goal? It's got to be measurable in some way. Is it achievable? We don't want to be creating pie in the sky type things. But you do, I will say this, sometimes people hit that achievable and their goals become pretty dull. You still want to be stretching yourself and say, hey, I think I can achieve it. I'm going to do everything I can to do that. It needs to be relevant and it needs to be time bound. When do I want to do this? So all those things play into a SMART goal.
Well, and I think again, going back to sales, I'm working with someone right now who has a certain target and they want me to help them. And I mean, in my mind, I'm going to do 50% over that person's target. So that stretch goal, you may not get there. You may still hit your goal, but your mindset is that you're going to go beyond that goal.
Mhm.
So if you can improve your ability to sell, again, in my case, and increase those percentages of how many people you talk to get a closing, then that stretch goal is really possible.
Yeah.
And I think the other things also, as a manager, I always sit down with people, at least weekly, to review the pipeline, but maybe monthly to review the goals, right?
Mhm.
How many calls did you make last month? How many presentations did you make last month? How many new people did you put in your pipeline last month? How many emails did you send out? All those things, because if I see somebody only made, 20 phone calls and they're supposed to make 100, and they only did 5 presentations when they're supposed to be doing 10, then clearly they're not going to get to their goals. So without goals, it's really difficult to manage people.
Yeah. Now, Jose, as a leader, many times we're helping people create those goals for themselves and for their department and so forth. But what about those larger goals that are maybe organizationally driven? How do you go about not just creating those goals, but communicating those goals in such a way that those who are following you understand why you would have these kind of goals?
Well, first off, all the leadership needs to be on the same page.
Mm.
So, say if I'm in charge of sales and you're in charge of operations, and the other person's the CEO, right? And we have this organizational goal, we all have to be moving in the same direction, saying the same things. I mean, my contribution to the sales part of it, is one thing, and yours and the marketing side is the other, and the CEO is the other. But if we're all saying the same thing, we're moving towards that same goal. And so everyone's communicating that same vision and everybody's on the same page,
Yeah.
right? If you don't have that, then it creates discord, then it creates confusion, then your morale suffers. And then guess what? Your goal doesn't happen because nobody really knew what the goal actually was. Again, going back to sports, think about this. You're a football team, right? And the wide receiver thinks the ball is coming to him, but the quarterback hands it off instead. And so, they get back to the huddle and say, wait a minute, we called this particular play. What, and so you have issues. If everybody's on the same page, that doesn't happen. And so those miscommunications can cause all kinds of havoc if it's taking place on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's why it's so important for leadership to constantly review, where are we headed? And what are those large strategic objectives that we have? So then you can weigh each goal each year that you're trying to attack. Because I think you're always going to have that person who has that pet project. And the only way you can deal with that pet project is say, hey, I'm sure it's profitable. I'm sure it'll help someone. I'm sure it's great. However, let's review our big strategic objectives. Does it fit there? And does it prioritize there? Or else you'll have people that said just doing what they want to do rather than what they need to do together in order to have success as an organization.
Well, and I touched on morale a few seconds ago. I mean, think about, if you have a group goal,
Hmm.
how cool it feels.
Yeah.
It's good. It's great when you hit your personal goal, but when the group hits their goal, let's
Yeah.
go celebrate. We work really hard and we're all moving in this direction. I mean, again, I hate to keep bringing back the sports analogy, but to me, I mean, that's so pertinent. Look at the celebrations after someone wins a championship, or even for that matter, if they just win a game. You look at the celebrations that take place, the satisfaction that people feel, and that morale builds, on the next goal, the next thing you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So in sum, it's basically when we create our goals, we are trying to do something to get everybody involved, moving one direction towards something that's going to bring us all a victory. And as hard as setting a goal can be, it's the very avenue that you're going to be able to celebrate. And I think going through that hard work is always worth it. And helping other people set those goals and then be able to communicate larger goals to the rest of the organization when need be. But thanks you again. Appreciate that. What do you want to add?
No, I was just going to say also, thinking about, large organizations, publicly traded companies in particular, that set these targets, right? And they're judged on that, and their stock price reflects, their ability to hit their target. So you think it's part of everything. And again, going back to, again, we're talking about, business stuff, but I mean, on a personal level, I mean, the most successful people personally, even, financially, are the ones that set the goals and they
Yeah.
stick to them.
Yeah, you can't build bridges to nowhere. You have to know where you're headed in order to get there. Good. Well, thanks again. I love these conversations and love talking about goal setting. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. It's so helpful.
Yeah.
So, any closing words that you had before we
No,
take
that's
off?
it, Chris. I appreciate our time together and sharing our thoughts with our audience.
All right. Thank you so much, Jose. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to meeting with you again on another episode of Skyrocket.